Greetings, brothers. Today's question is, who's better in 9th edition? Is it Mephiston or is it Librarian Dreadnought? In this video we'll compare everything, so buckle up and stay tuned. If we're just meeting, I'm John, the Blood Angels Commander. Thanks for tuning in to the weekly tactics video, and if you want detailed analysis on various Blood Angels units every week, then please consider subscribing.
Okay, so full comparison, Mephiston, read Librarian Dreadnought, and we'll go over the overview, the psychic strength, some detailed Mathhammer, Stratagems, Warlord Traits, Synergies, and then a summary. And yeah, so we start by just looking at their profile. So Mephiston is a bit tougher than regular Marine with his strength and toughness of 5, 6 wounds, 5 attacks, which is 1 more since he became Primaris. 2+ save with a 5+++, feel no pain for being the Lord of Death. And he has a Psychic Hood, Plasma Pistol, Strength 10, Force Sword, which annoyingly is D3 rather than a flat number of damage, and then his Warlord trait is Speed of the Primarch. Librarian Dreadnought can be equipped with a Heavy Flame or a Melt Gun. I mean, I guess you can take a Stormbolter as well if you want to just save 5 points. He is Weapon Skill and Ballistic Skill 3, so slightly less, obviously more strength, more toughness, more wounds, 1 less attack, but he does get that bonus attack every turn with his Force Halberd, so I guess that actually makes him the same amount of attacks, and then he just has a 3+ save. But he is rocking Duty Eternal, he does have Smokescreen, and then obviously his fist is strength 12, the same -3, but it's a flat 3 damage, and no trait defined. So he's a little bit more customizable, but yeah, let's just keep moving on. So in the psychic strength, so Mephiston knows 3 powers from the Psyker discipline. He casts 2 and he denies 2, and he gets +1 to denies within 12 inches from his Psychic Hood. And core powers I feel like from Mephiston are probably Wings of Sanguinius and Quickening, because this really lets him be very mobile around the battlefield and also buff him up to I think it's 10 attacks. Optional powers I suppose would be like Unleash Rage or the Shield, so you could basically give another unit Exploding 6s, or you can give another unit 5+ Feel No Pain. And it's a 72% chance to cast anything from the Sanguinary Discipline, and that every power now has a warp charge of 6, and I guess if you want to smite there's an 83% chance. I just thought I'd put those down so they just help out deciding on, you know, he's going to get 2 powers per game, so he's going to cast 10 powers through the game, and 72%, so you can average, you're going to get to cast about 7 powers. I mean, you can command reroll psychic tests, but by average, you're going to do 7. So Librarian Dreadnought also knows 2 from the Sanguinary Discipline. He knows 2, which is 1 less. He casts 2 and he denies 1. And again, he gets +1 to his denies. He can be made Chief Librarian for 25 points, which would put him up at 180. And this gives him 1 additional cast and deny. So that's quite strong in that he would cast 3 and deny 2. So I guess if you're picking 3 sanguinary powers, you can basically cast all of them every turn. He also has a Warlord trait he has an option to take, which would be the Psychic Mastery, and that would basically +1 to all psychic tests. So if you did that, then all your sanguinary powers would be a 83% chance, and then you would have a 91% chance of smiting. So 11% more chance on every power cast, and basically by being Chief Librarian as well, you would get to do 5 more powers in the game. So we'll come back to the exact numbers a bit later, but it's quite a strong buff. Core powers for him, I think, are Wings of Sanguinius. Obviously the Flying Dreadnought is a thing that all Blood Angels players know and love. And then optional powers, I guess, Shield of Sanguinius, Quickening, or Unleashed Rage. Yeah, I really don't take the direct damage powers. I mean, I feel like if you want to do some direct damage, you already have access to Smite. I mean, I guess with careful positioning, because Smite always targets the closest enemy within 18, you can usually get the Smite off, and the other powers usually only do 1 or 2 mortal wounds. There's very few situations that I would take this in. I feel like maybe like if you were against Necron Catan and you needed to do some mortal wounds every turn, but I think a more general and safe option is to take Wings and then work your other powers around that. And then an Angel Exemplar, which was one of our new stratagems in the Space Marine supplement, or in the Blood Angel supplement, we can use this to generate an additional Warlord trait as the Dread cannot take any relics. Yeah, so the Dreadnought used to have his Biomantic Sarcophagus, that is gone, but now I guess the Dreadnought, if he is your Warlord, you could take 2 Warlord traits, 1 from the Space Marine book and 1 from the Blood Angels book, or both from the Blood Angels book. That's your options. So let's jump into Mathhammer. So in Mathhammer we're going to look at a few different options here this week. So we're going to look at Mephiston, we're going to look at him again with the Shield of Sanguinius, and then we're going to look at the Dreadnought with the Iron Resolve Warlord trait, which I actually really like. It keeps him under the 10 wounds, so he can still be protected by Lookout Sir, and he gives him that 6+ Feel No Pain. It's good especially if you get Pearls of the Warp. It gives you a chance to save against some of the Pearls damage. The Librarian Dreadnought also gets a profile with Shield of Sanguinius, and then also Shield of Sanguinius and the Iron Resolve. So I don't ever work out how many, like, we ignore hits for my Mathhammer when we look at survivability. So basically you just assume that you've been hit in these columns. So you need to be hit 81 times. So that basically means your attacker would make the attack and roll to hit. So we've taken that part out of the equation because I feel like that's difficult to balance across different factions because different people have different ballistic skills. So you're basically saying if you are hit 81 times with bolt rifles, that kills Mephiston. If you were hit 13.5 times with a flamestorm cannon, that's him dead, right? Like, we just took that part. So this is factoring in the roll to wound and his saves, I guess, and any Feel No Pains he's got as well. So again, green is the best for each column and yellow is second. So Mephiston does great against the small arms fire. I guess his 2+ save and his 5+ Feel No Pain really show a huge strength against small arms fire, I guess with his Toughest 5 as well. However, in all other columns he's considerably weaker than the Dreadnought. And I mean, the Dreadnought in some cases here, the Dreadnought with Iron Resolve and the Dreadnought with the Iron Resolve and the Shield of Sanguinius, actually there's no difference, I guess. But with the Dreadnought with the Iron Resolve, he's comparable. He's only 20% less. And then if you compare like the 2 damage weapons, because the Dreadnought obviously gets his Duty Eternal, he's 3 or 4 times more strong against the Power Fists. In some situations, with Iron Resolve he's basically double, so he can take twice as many Power Fists. Now that's quite critical because this guy will be in combat and you will be getting hit by, you know, high AP 2 damage weapons. And then against the Plasmas, again, Duty Eternal pays dividends here. And if you did take the Iron Resolve and you put the Shield of Sanguinius on himself, then he's basically twice as strong as Mephiston, even with Mephiston with the shield as well. Without the shield, it's probably about 80% as strong. So in the few lists that I got in the last week submitted on the channel, everybody's gone straight back to Mephiston with you know, looking at the lists that I've been submitted. It used to, up until we got our sanguinary powers back, everybody was taking Librarian Dreadnought, and all of a sudden there's been a big shift towards Mephiston, and I was wondering, is that the right call? Because I was building a list just the other day and was like, I'd done it as well, I'd put Mephiston in. And yeah, I mean, straight away after looking at this survivability, you know, your characters can't do damage if they're dead, so in terms of survivability being twice as survivable, you know, that gives the Librarian Dreadnought a good chance of getting deeper into the game. He's alive for more turns, you can cast more powers, you can do more damage. So yeah, I mean, basically straight away after looking at this survivability, I thought to myself, I need to, you know, I need to check out damage. So that's what we're going to do next. So we're going to look at all the damage, and this slide we won't stay on very long, but what I've done is I've worked out the number of shots, and I've also worked out, like, Mephiston, like, so this would be a turn 1 attack, this would be like a turn 3+ attack with the Savage Echoes, and then this would be Savage Echoes and a max roll of quickening, so potentially is max damage. So we worked that out, did the exact same for Librarian, and then factored in armor saves, and this week we've got like 5 different model types. So like a toughness 4 infantry with a 3+ save, a character with a 3+ and a 4+ invulnerable. These would be basically like your new Death Guard, because Death Guard are getting a buff, so it'd be like 3+ and then they're 5+ disgustingly resilient, and some sort of monster, and then some sort of armor like a Land Raider or some big armor with a 3+ save. I guess maybe those new Primaris tanks would be this. This wouldn't be a Land Raider, this would be a Repulsor actually. And then worked again how much damage he can do against each thing, taking in the armor saves and the toughness into the equations. And then I've basically, although this is average damage dealt, this is the maximum average damage. So in this case we're looking at like the 10 attacks from Vitarius and the high power plasma pistol would do a potential 12.73. And if you would like me to include it, and then we've got a little bit of space down here at the bottom on this slide, if you'd like me to include any specific enemy armor or type in a future video, then leave me a comment down below. And if you're getting any value out of this video, please consider hitting the like button. It really helps my channel out. So yeah, I think we could put in another unit if there is one that people typically fight against and wanted to see how these characters, or future videos as well, do against them. So after we'd done that, we did the exact same with the Librarian Dreadnought. Again, we're not going to stay on the slide very long because we're going to compare, but you can pause the video and check out any of these numbers if you want. And then again, we did the Meltagun and the Heavy Flamer. For the average damage dealt, I actually used the Meltagun. It does more damage in every situation, but I mean, like, I guess the Heavy Flamer, it could have some shots split across multiple targets, so you could take that into account. And then we did that. We get to the comparison stage. So I've done the average damage, which we showed you was the last column. We've then done their early game close combat. So basically their close combat before turn 3 in the Assault Doctrine, and then we've done the late game close combat, which is the close combat after turn 3 in the Assault Doctrine. And I've actually highlighted the best results in pink. So I wouldn't have thought this when I was going to make this video. I know that the Librarian Dreadnought actually, personally I think he suffers a bit because he's got weapon skill 3, whereas Mephiston has the weapon skill of 2 and a ballistic skill as well. But it turns out when you actually do the maths, Librarian Dreadnought is better against everything in terms of the maximum damage they can do. He's better in the close at the early game, and I guess better in some cases just a few, 10%, and then in some cases up to 20%, and I guess the low infantry, yeah, it's almost 50%, and then up at the late game, I guess, yeah, I mean, like, he really pulls ahead. So Librarian wins on everything: the average damage, the close combat, the late game, and in some cases over here, this is actually 80% more damage. Yeah, I mean, bear in mind that these infantry are unlikely to have 3 wounds, so I guess some wounds would be lost because it's a 3 damage. His weapons are 3 damage or more, but I mean, just in terms of like the raw damage he can deal out, it's so superior. And then if you combine that with him being more survivable, which we talked about before, he's like 50% against some weapons, 200% against other weapons. The only thing he doesn't more survivable against is -1 AP weapons, which seems random, but I mean, that's the way it is. And then also we got some Warlord trait options here, so we could take the Chief Librarian trait as well, plus a Blood Angels trait. So there's a lot of interesting thoughts about the Librarian, and the fact he's customizable as well is kind of leaning me heavily towards him. Okay, so this is a good slide, and I mean, I guess it really shows you the difference in strength, and it shows you just how effective the Librarian Dreadnought could be. I know in a game a few weeks ago I had the Librarian Dreadnought do 15 wounds to Mortarion in 1 turn, so these numbers actually, these are averages. I guess that was a really good roll, but yeah, the Librarian Dreadnought with his 3 damage weapon and his 9 attacks he can get at the end of the game is very, very strong. Okay, so if you look at stratagems for these guys, so Spiritual Might casts 1 additional power this turn. It's got more value on Mephiston, I guess, unless the Chief Librarian trait is chosen, because otherwise the Librarian Dreadnought only has 2 powers, so you can already cast both that he has. Red Rampage is one we can use, the make 6s gain an additional point of AP. Typically, though, I don't know if either of these guys' weapons really need an additional point of AP. They're -3 and then -4 with Savage Echoes. I think they're fine. Angel's Sacrifice is Mephiston only, and it forces all enemy units with engagement range to target him. I mean, it sounds cool on paper, but whether or not, like, I haven't been in a game, I've only had one, I suppose, with a new book, but I haven't been in a game that I've really seen a use for this yet, but I think it might have some use. But yeah, you can't use it with the Librarian Dreadnought, I guess, because he's vertical. You can Armour of Contempt the Librarian to ignore mortal wounds on a 5+, so if you didn't want to take that Iron Resolve, if you didn't want to take that Iron Resolve and wanted to just be able to save mortal wounds on a 5+, you could still do it. Transhuman on Mephiston would make wound rolls of 1 to 3 always fail against him, so he can become a little bit more survivable against high strength weapons if you need him to be. Only in Death Does Duty End makes makes you do your close combat attacks even if you die, as long as you've not been chosen to fight. So I mean, even if they jump in and kill these characters, they can always get a chance to fight. The smoke screen in the Librarian Dreadnought makes it -1 to shooting attacks for the phase. I think this is really useful. Smoke screen in general I think is really useful, so the fact that he has this as well as Lookout Sir, so if he does ever get out of position, then you can still save on him, which is nice. And then Wisdom of the Ancient, reroll 1s of hits and wounds in your command phase for the whole turn, and this has strong synergy with core units, such as like Sanguinary Guard or Vanguard Veterans. So, and again, I didn't write it there, but Wisdom of the Ancient is Librarian only. So quite a bunch of stratagems that they can both use to be a bit more effective. And then the Warlord traits, so like I said, 1 CP for Angel Exemplar and Librarian Dread allows him to take either 2 Blood Angels Warlord traits or 1 Space Marine and 1 Blood Angels, and I guess when I say Space Marine, one of those Space Marines could be that Psychic Mastery. The Marine traits that I like, I guess, are Iron Resolve, you know, the +1 to wound and the 6+++, feel no pain, makes him 9 wounds, and, you know, makes him very survivable, really. And puts it up to 25 Power Fist hits to kill him, which is a lot of Power Fists. You know, that's not, you know, if you think of Power Fist normally hits on a 4, so I mean that would be 50 people attacking him with a Power Fist to bring him down. That's a lot. Rites of War makes OBSEC for all units within 6, and I mean I guess this synergizes well with like a Sanguinary Guard or something. The Imperium Sword, so you could reroll charges and get +1 to his attacks. And then obviously Psychic Mastery, how we talked about how if you had the Chief Librarian, we could get +1 to all your psychic tests. I think that has some value as well. You know, even with Angel's Exemplar, you can't take 2 Marine Codex traits, so if you took Psychic Mastery, you couldn't take Iron Resolve, and I really like Iron Resolve, but I mean, I'll leave that up into your hands. Blood Angel's traits, you could take the Soul Warden to give a 5+ feel no bubble around him against mortal wounds. We could take Gift of Foresight to reroll 1 hit, 1 wound, 1 save. That might be quite valuable. I mean, if you're going to take the Psychic test, then I would almost be tempted to take Gift of Foresight. I just don't like the fact that he only has that 3+ save, so you know, if he gets hit with a high EP weapon and you've got no feel no pain, you just have to soak all the damage, which is a bit ugly. Selfless Valor, I mean, you could take Selfless Valor, so he has a 6-inch Heroic Intervention. You used to be able to pay CP for this, you can't do that now. But, I mean, a 6-inch Heroic Intervention on a Dreadnought with 10 attacks, and yeah, I mean, I think it's generally very good. And then Mephiston has Speed of the Primarch only. It's the only Warlord trait he can take, and if you ask me, it's kind of lower value, because if you get charged, you still don't fight first. So there's situations where Mephiston can still get charged, he can still get killed from full health, and your Warlord trait doesn't help you at all, so not the greatest. So let's have a talk about synergies though. So Mephiston is obviously a Primaris now, so you can go in an Impulsor with like 5 Assault Intercessors or 5 Death Company Intercessors or Blade Guard Veterans. And I mean, I guess this synergizes well with Unleash Rage Power, giving him exploding 6s, or giving the unit he's with exploding 6s. This would be especially good with Assault Intercessors, right? Because you could choose to fight first, fight twice with them with Honor of the Chapter. So potentially you could be looking at like 2 rounds of combat with exploding 6s. So that could be very strong with Mephiston. And then Mephiston can also torpedo out of an Impulsor. And what I mean by torpedo is he disembarks 3, he then moves his 7, he then casts his wings to move 12, and then he charges 2d6 + 1 with quickening. So, I mean, if you add all those up, you're like, you've moved 22 inches before you charge. So if there's a high value target you really want to get into, the difference is in the last edition you could always honour the chapter of Mephiston, and you could fight twice, and you could almost guarantee that you would what he was fighting or torpedoing into you would kill. I don't think we can do that anymore, and if you are going to try and do that, then make sure you always cast your wings first, and attempt to CP reroll it if you fail, because if you fail your quickening power and you try your reroll on quickening, then you can be left exposed out in the open. So it's almost like you want to maybe cast wings first is the wrong thing to say. You could cast quickening first. You just can you need to make sure that you save your reroll for wings, because the last thing you want to do is move out 3 or disembark your 3, move 7 and be really exposed, go to cast your wings and it fails, and you can't move and you're just stuck out in the open. I've had that happen to me, and then he's just been shot off the board, so good thing to learn in hindsight. Okay, if either of them are selected as the Warlord, if they ran with the Sanguinary Guard, obviously the Sanguinary Guard would get +1 to hit with them if they're within 6, so because they can both now fly, they could keep up with the Sanguinary Guard, so that's an option. Sanguinary Guard with Librarian Dreadnought could get reroll 1s from Wisdom of the Ancient, so the Dread would, and then they would protect the Dreadnought from Lookout Sir. So you know, the Dreadnought might actually synergize quite nice with the Sanguinary Guard if you get off those flies and you can follow them around the board and you can let them reroll 1s and hits on 2s. And then obviously if that Dreadnought's jumping out of that group to fight as well, like, he does a ton of damage. So and then I guess, like, yeah, another, I don't know if it's a synergy as much, but the Dreadnought could cast 3 powers a turn if he had Chief Librarian upgrade, and then it would be 1 CP to cast 4. So you could use all 3 of your Sanguinary powers and then Smite as well. It's quite a lot of potential, you know, quite a lot of utility he could bring to the battle, and then a bit of damage as well with this. You know, the Smite has potential to do D6 mortal wounds, so quite a bit of stuff you could do there. And then if you want to reserve your Librarian Dreadnought, you could as well. I mean, he's only 8 power level, so could be an alternative way to get him, like, deep into enemy territory. So it'd just be 1 CP if you want to reserve your Librarian, bring him in, and then jump and try and kill some high value targets, something he can definitely do. Okay, so then in summary, so the return of the Sanguinary Discipline, I've seen just in the last week a good number of lists, like I said, submitted that include Mephiston over the Librarian Dreadnought. Mephiston didn't synergize well with the Librarius Discipline from the Space Marine power, so it made sense. And the first list I wrote, like I said, in the new Codex, I also dropped the Dreadnought to include Mephiston. I don't know if that's just all Blood Angels players love Mephiston and we want to see him back. However, the Librarian is more survivable even on the base profile, and this can be boosted by multiple Warlord traits. I mean, Mephiston could gain up 1+ cover save at times, but it's very situational, and I don't really think you can reliably bring that into the equation. And then damage wise, it's pretty convincing. The Librarian Dread is much stronger. He would also benefit even more from rerolls from, like, a Chapter Master or a Litany of Hate, due to his 3+ weapon skill compared to, like, Mephiston's 2+. So if he gets rerolls, he's going to be even stronger, and he was already 20 to 80% stronger in close combat, so rerolls would just add another 22%. So, you know, like, you're talking 40 to 100% stronger than Mephiston. It's just, it's crazy. And then, yeah, with the only in Death Does Duty end, even engaging in one of the charge for the enemy player could actually be potentially problematic if you have him with that Shield of Sanguinius on himself, or Iron Resolve. Then he's very survivable, and even if they do kill him, he's just going to dish back a huge ton of damage. And then currently Mephiston could deny 1 more power, but they both cast 2, and for 25 points Librarian can go cast 3 and 2 denies. I think this seems quite a valuable option, especially if you combine with the Psychic Mastery to make all the Sanguinary powers cast on 83% up for 72%. If you break that down over 5 turns and assume both characters survive the battle, Mephiston can cast like 7.2 powers, or successfully cast 7.2 powers, while Librarian could successfully cast 12.4. You know, so that's a significant difference, and it only costs like 1 Death Company troop, or, like, you know, 1 Vanguard Veteran with a Storm Shield. Those are both 25-point options. So sacrificing 1 of those troops for 5 more successful psychic powers, or even the ability to try and cast 5 more over the course of the battle, to me seems worth it. And yeah, with this level with this number of casts, I suppose I would be tempted to take Shields, Unleash Rage, and Wings, and then do some serious utility and still be able to react to threats. I say that, however, in my battle last night, which I did win, I did Wings, Shield, and Quickening, and yeah, I think I had Quickening up like 3 or 4 times on him, and yeah, I mean, Quickening is just generally very strong when he has that Furioso Fist that does 3 damage of pop. So that's sort of an overview of the new 9th edition, Mephiston and the Librarian.
So I hope this breakdown really helped you out. I think before I did this breakdown, I was definitely considering Mephiston. Now I think I'm taking the Librarian with the Chief Librarian, and then I'm Warlord Traiting him with the Feel No Pain Iron Resolve. And I ran that just yesterday in my first game since the new codex, and I was fairly pleased with the results. 3 powers per turn is very strong, I feel like. It gives you a lot of options, and I guess the 3 powers that you pick are up to you. I do think Wings is core, and then really beyond that, it's really however you want to run them in your army list. So let me know in the comments below, who are you considering taking in your army and what powers are you going to take with them. I have heard some people saying you can run a regular Librarian now with a jump pack to get access to the Space Marine, the Librarius discipline powers, and there is some value there. Like Psychic Fortress is fairly nice. I mean, it's slightly better than Shield of Sanguinius in that it's a bubble, and then obviously Null Zone, so I guess a Librarian with a jump pack could do some work. So is that an option that maybe we could cover on the channel in the future? But for now, Mephiston and Librarian Dreadnought, they have been core throughout sort of the last few editions of Warhammer, and I personally think I love Mephiston. I kind of played him way more than I played the Librarian Dreadnought up until 9th edition, but I think now the flexibility of being able to pick your Warlord traits and also being able to do those 3 powers kind of just pushes him to really my choice. And then obviously he has a Meltagun as well, which is good for just a random bit of damage as opposed to Mephiston's Plasma Pistol, which you can never really risk shooting on high power. So thanks very much for tuning in. I hope to see you guys in the next one. We have a live stream on Sunday, as always, looking at various army list submissions, and then I think we're going to have a codex show, because the codex is out now, and I promised you a codex show last week, but because of the delay in the arrival of the codex, we'll have the codex show maybe this Saturday, and then into next week, time allowing, I'm going to try and put together the footage from the army list that we just, the Sisters of Battle that I fought earlier this week, and if not, then we'll see you next Friday on the tactics video, and that battle report will be in the works. They take quite a lot of time to edit together. Alright, I hope to see all you guys in the next one. Thanks very much again for tuning in. By the blood are we made. Peace. Oh yeah, do you like the Commander Dante top? I thought it was pretty dope.